Is 6 o'clock and the council meeting is now in session. And Council Member Brenda Hughes is going to provide the invocation for us and then the pledge. If you'll please stand.
And I've asked my friend Jeff Tallarico, pastor of Transformation Church, to lead us in prayer tonight.
If you bow your heads with me, please. Father, we ask that you guide this meeting tonight. Let your presence be felt and allow your work to be done. I ask you, Lord, to heal our city. These past few weeks have been an extremely trying time for our little part of the world. Allow us to recognize your mercies and grace in all the tragedy that we have been witness to. Father, heal the hearts of those who have personally experienced loss. Allow them to see you in all of this and heal them, Lord. And Father, to those who continue to cause pain, whether it be by words or actions, I ask that you convict their spirits to stop and repent. Lord, you have created us to fellowship with you and to walk in your light and not to harm others. Allow us to remember that you did not create political parties, but rather you created us to support one another, even through disagreement. Bring healing to our land, Father, and let us all be the vessel that you have created us to be. Thank you for your presence here tonight, and may your protection be upon all that are here. In the name of Jesus, I pray. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Jeff.
Let me just mention some general protocols for our meeting. If anyone present wants to speak on an agenda item, they need to sign up and present a speaker request form to the city secretary right here in advance of the item being read into the record by the city secretary. When speakers are called, they are to come to the microphone and begin by stating their name and address for the record. Note that public comment periods are for council to set aside time to specifically hear from you. Any questions that you might have will not be responded to until after public comments have concluded. And I want to thank everyone for helping to make this a good and positive meeting. At this time, let's look at some items of community interest. And Mr. Cunus, would you tell us about that?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you to everyone who's here tonight. Appreciate your presence. We have a couple of events coming up before we meet again in December. So let's get to those real quick. 11 days from now, can't believe it's that soon, but 11 days from now, we have the 20th Annual Holiday Lighted Parade. And that'll be right down here in downtown Kerrville. I know we look forward to it every year. It's a lot of fun, a lot of cars. Do we know how many floats we have this year? Yeah, 80 so far. 80 so far. So I think we had 92 last year, so I guess we still have room for a little more. But encourage everybody to be down here. That starts at 6 o'clock, November 20th. That's a Saturday. Again, we look forward to it. Santa will be there. I don't know if you could tell from the picture, but I think Santa is a Texas Tech fan because he's doing this.
I knew Santa was here.
And December 4th, we are having the Running Home for the Holidays 5K. We had this 2 years ago. A lot of fun. You can dress up as something to do with Christmas and make the 5K. You don't have to dress up as something to do with Christmas. It's probably a little easier if you just come and run. But either way, we want to see you there. That's 4 o'clock, Louise Hayes Park, 202 Thompson Drive. There will be a raffle prizes. A lot of fun. Some great costumes a couple of years ago, so we look forward to that too. Also, I don't have a slide for it, but if you have a question about oak wilt, Master Gardener Ann Brown will be at the library 10:30 this Saturday morning. She'll be talking about that. So I don't think that's really a problem here in the Hill Country, is it? Oak wilt?
Yeah. All right, council, any other items of community interest?
I have one. Last Friday, council and staff was able to take a walk over to the park and look at the project that's underway for the new access ramp to the library from there to Tranquility Island. And so just pleased to announce that that project's underway and scheduled to be completed by the spring of 2022.
All right, good.
Mr. Mayor, I have,
Yes, go ahead.
may I say four
Sure.
things? I'm sorry. There's just things that need to be said. I think first I'd like to congratulate Sharvie Tork and Ashley Boyle. They were selected as KEDC Top Professional Recipients. So congratulations to both of them. And then a shout out to KEDC and Gil and Teresa for planning and carrying out that wonderful forum. Wasn't as many people in attendance as they would have liked, but the topics were interesting and very relevant. A lot of people were involved in those, and I really liked that the aviation world posted jobs following that forum, and I think that was great. But just thank you to Gil and Teresa for their efforts, and just note attendance will grow because it was a great event, and it's going to get even better. Would also like to say that the Food Relief Fund with Community Foundation that we started over a year ago, we raised at least $140,000, and we have $10,000 left. So it's just done its work. It's been doing what it's supposed to be doing. In that regard, I would like to say thank you to the KPUB employees. They, on a monthly basis, have been contributing themselves. It's not coming from the KPUB entity. It's coming from the employees. They're giving $200 to $250 a month to that fund. So we really appreciate that, and you can still contribute. And it's Christmas time, and with Thanksgiving, so just know that fund is still open. And all you have to do, you can go online or call Community Foundation. So if you're interested in doing that in memory of someone or in honor of someone, it would be much, much appreciated. And then the last thing is Veterans Day on Thursday. There will be a program at the Doyle Community Center beginning at 11:30, I believe. I think I've got that time right. So if you're it will be inside. So if you've not had a chance to see the new building, this is a great time to do it. And I've been told they're going to serve dinner afterwards, free. So on Thursday at 11:30. That's it. I'm done. Thank you.
Okay, all right, thank you. At this time, I would like for the Hill Country Dental Group and Dr. Bone to please join me here at the front. Let me read this proclamation. The Hill Country Dental Associates has twice been instrumental in bringing Texas Mission of Mercy events to Kerrville. Doctors Jennifer and Jamie Bone and their staff pre-screened hundreds of patients and coordinated with 60 other dentists and more than 200 dental support staff for each event, providing more than $500,000 in free dental care. Hill Country Dental Associates has also been at the forefront of serving children through the Create a Smile program, which serves uninsured children having a dental crisis. The Kerrville Kindness Program offers a unique thank you to Hill Country Dental Associates for its commitment to and compassion for serving the Kerrville community. Congratulations, and any comments?
We're just happy to do our small part. We've got a great dental community here, and you know, there's always room for more help, and we're glad to do our little part in the job.
All right, good. Yeah, let's get a picture looking right over this way. All right, okay. Good. Yeah, I want to recognize some people who have served on the boards here at the city. And I know a number of these could not be here tonight. Mike Asmus, okay, served on the Zoning Board of Adjustments. Melba Maring on Senior Services Advisory Board. Janice Anderson on Senior Services Advisory Board. I'm waiting for somebody to take one of these. Michael Welburn has served as a member of the Main Street Advisory Board. Okay. Ann Overby has served as a member of the Main Street Advisory Board. All right. And Mary Elaine Jones has served as a member of the Main Street Advisory Board, the date of service beginning August 25, 2020, and has served faithfully in that role.
Her husband's here.
Yeah, I know. This is her assistant.
I could be so lucky.
Yeah, yeah. All right, okay. Well, we come now to our Visitor Citizens Forum. And in regard to this is provided to allow citizens who have signed up ahead of time to address the council on any item not related to another specific item on the agenda. And Ms. McElhannon, do we have anyone signed up?
Yes, sir. We have 5.
Okay,
Stephanie Cash.
all right. Stephanie,
Hello, good evening, everybody. Am I talking into this thing?
yeah,
Okay. I'm Stephanie Cash. I'm with Hill Country CASA. Thank you so much for allowing me to speak and for your support over the years of the CASA program in Kerrville. November is National Adoption Month, and so it's a good time to be reminded of the work of the CASA volunteers in our community. Hill Country CASA was established in 1989 to provide trained community volunteers to serve child residents of Kerr, Kendall, Bandera, and Gillespie counties removed from their homes and into state foster care due to abuse or neglect, and to aid the courts making decisions about permanence for these children. A child removed from their home due to abuse or neglect loses everything that they know at once: their home, their parents, maybe their siblings, their friends, pets, school, and other connections in the community that provide a normal and stable childhood. There were over 45,000 Texas children in foster care in 2020. So this is a really large and chaotic system, and timely individual attention and services is a difficult thing to achieve for these children. Our CASA volunteers work under court appointment to assure that every child in foster care from the Hill Country receives ongoing individual attention, necessary services, and timely placement in a safe, loving, and permanent home. CASAs are trained to provide strong advocacy for the child's best interest, timely individual services for the children, and family reunification whenever safe and securely possible. The reasons that children are in foster care are not because their parents don't love them. It's because their parents do not have the skills that they need to safely parent. This may be because of mental health issues, addiction, family violence, criminal issues, or other struggles within the household. CASA volunteers provide a listening ear to these parents. We model appropriate parent-child interactions and support parents as they work toward reunification of their family. If reunification cannot be achieved, Hill Country CASA volunteers remain alongside the child until safe permanence is found in a loving home. This includes diligent search for relatives or other kin, follow-up with parents, coordinating services and skill building for children, and being a consistent, caring adult in that child's life. Just being a trusted adult friend for that child going through a very tough time. The value of our CASA program is based on the common sense and consistency of caring individuals providing these strong advocacy services for the children. In fiscal year 2021, which we closed on August 31st of this year, our 84 volunteers gave 3,100 hours and drove over 40,000 miles to visit children where they live, to go to court hearings, collaborative meetings, and other events as necessary to provide best interest for these children. And there were 206 in the Hill Country last year. Texas has 72 independent CASA programs. We serve 219 counties across the state. 60% of children in foster care have a CASA across the state, but I'm very proud to report that because of the generosity of this community, we were the only CASA program in Texas that was able to provide a trained volunteer for every single child that needed one in the foster care system from our area. We're committed to continuing that level of service. We have partnered with many members of the community, with City Council, with Kerr County Commissioner's Court, and others to ensure that we are able to provide this service for these very special children from our community. I have a few stats I'm going to hand you because I'm out of time. I welcome you to the CASA office just across the street anytime. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Okay. Good. Thank you, Stephanie.
George Baruti.
George Brody, 1616 Glen Road. So I got two things. One's actually a compliment to the Parks Department. I don't know the names of the guys, but I ride on the river trail, and I've been wanting to come in and say this, but the guys that are cleaning the park or maintaining it or whatever, they ride on the little golf carts or whatever they are. Every time I ride up, they see me in their little rear view mirror and they move off to the side. You don't have to slow down. They're not just doing their job, but they're paying attention to what's around them. So at least tell them I don't know who they are. One guy has a really long beard. That's all I remember. The second thing is something I asked about last meeting. And so instead of making an item, if someone can just tell me where I go to report the emergency access lane that goes up Bluff Ridge is not just a auxiliary access. It's actually a half mile shorter to go up the access lane than to go around, and it's two turns shorter to do that. So it's a safety issue for the people at the top. Currently, the man that's building a house adjacent to it is using the top of the access lane for his construction site waste. He has piles of dirt on it, and he parks his trailer with generators on it. So my question is, where do I go to get that resolved and check on the fact that his fence that he built is actually attached to the concrete of that access lane? So if someone could tell me where I go in the city to discuss that.
Okay.
It's been noted and staff is working on that issue.
Okay, good. Thank you. Thank you.
Where would a citizen go, just statement of fact, where would a citizen go to what department within the city?
It's our code enforcement department.
Okay, thank you.
All right, next.
R.M. Tier.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, my name is Ray Tier. I live at 546 San Bend Drive. As a relatively new resident of Kerrville, although a longtime observer of politics in Kerrville, it has distressed, excuse me, I thought I had muted that. It has distressed me that since one of the candidates who was favored by a couple members of this council failed to be elected, that the person who in fact was elected doesn't get the kind of respect or support that that particular council member deserves. I would really like to address an item that's later on the agenda, but I can't stay that long. I have a sick wife at home. But there's the next to the item just before going into executive session looks like it could be directed at one particular member of council who happens to be tech savvy and uses that to help him do his job well. So I need to stop here. I realize I'm getting over into an issue. But it's not about the technology. It's about the way in which this particular council member has been treated by the other four, as though it's always 4 against 1. Now, I've lived in places where there was a good old boy network that functioned, and anytime they got crossed, they made life difficult, not only for the individual who might have taken a place that they intended somebody else to have, but also for the citizens of the particular community. I don't want to see that in Kerrville. So I would ask you, please, to rethink some of the things that you're doing, as well as remember, this council member was elected with a huge majority over the person who failed to be elected. That ought to tell you something. Also, he's the one that offered the motion, but it died for lack of a second, and so then you ended up with a petition drive to get a bond issue about the police and fire department's new facility. Please. We don't need that in Kerrville. We have plenty of it in Austin and in Washington, D.C. We don't need that kind of stuff here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bruce Strachey.
Hold on. There we go. Bruce Drakey, 615 Earl Garrett. October. October was one of the most exciting months in Kerrville we've had since, I want to say, February of 2020. There were so many things going on in Kerrville in October. If you think about it, right, we had 5K runs, we had the triathlon, we had art shows, we had, I'm missing some, and I'm sorry I didn't make a full list, I didn't have time today. But October, if you go back and look at the calendar of events in October in Kerrville and the surrounding area, including the arts out in Ingram and some other things, October was absolutely a fabulous month. And I don't want to say we're back to normal because years ago I had an accident where I lost vision in an eye, and my wife said, I kept saying, I can't wait to get back to my 100%. And my wife finally said to me, Bruce, you're never going to get back to 100%. You need to think about your new 100%. And that was a pivotal moment for me, and Kerrville's at that moment now. We have gotten through, we are working through what's still going on with the pandemic, but we are at a point where we're very close to a new 100%, and it's absolutely wonderful. And I want to thank staff who have been here for many years and through all the pandemic and Snowvid and all the things that they did, because they went above and beyond. And I want to thank the council and their encouragement and the way that they set policy, and they encourage staff to go out and implement that policy. And the way this team works is really wonderful. And we need to change. We need to look forward, because we're not going back, in my opinion, we're not going back to the old 100%. We need to look forward, like I had to do many, many years ago, at the new 100%, and we are so close. I just spent a week in Utah. I'm busy in my business. I needed some time off. I went over to southern Utah, which is my home. Utah's, that's where I grew up. And I spent a week there, and I drove. And on the drive back, I purposefully took my time, and I took some I didn't drive the interstates. Took some back paths, and I drove through Clovis, New Mexico, in Ballinger, Texas, and different places. And one of the things I noticed is towns that are of a size similar to Kerrville. And I'm biased, I've lived here since 2006. But I didn't see a single town on the way that I wanted to call home. I didn't see a single town that didn't have trash about, that wasn't struggling with their main street. We struggle, our main street isn't perfect, but downtown is really better than it was years ago, and it's doing very well. This is a great place to live, and again, it's because of our dedicated staff and the city councils, this one and the one before it and the one before that and the one before that, and the interaction that we have with citizens and the way that we work through our differences of opinion and what we think is best for Kerrville. Thank you all.
Thank you, Bruce. Okay.
James Wright.
Good afternoon. My name is Dr. James Wright. My address is 3338 Duderstadt Road, and that's Harper, Texas, by the way, but we're close by. I'm representing the Heart of the Hills Heritage Center. We're a 501(c) nonprofit, and I represent them as vice chairman of the board. Over 3 years ago, our group began a partnership with the city of Kerrville to maximize the utilization of the A.C. Shriner Mansion at 507 Water Street on the campus of Butt Holsworth Memorial Library campus. In our negotiations with the city, we agreed that a budget of $5 million would be needed to renovate and repurpose the mansion and provide us, HHHC, with a long-term lease. Working closely with the city, $4 million were raised instantly almost. And now we wish to announce that the final $1 million has also been raised, which will be for the conversion of the interior of the building into a functional, interactive, educational facility to tell the story of the history of Kerrville and Kerr County. The final $1 million was provided by 6 founding contributors: the Perry and Ruby Stevens Charitable Foundation, the Hal and Charlie Peterson Foundation, the Friends of the Butt Holdsworth Memorial Library, the Community Foundation of the Texas Hill Country, the Kalou Foundation, the Meadows Foundation. We are here to thank you, the Kerrville City Council, for your support, your generosity, and your vision. Tonight, I'm privileged to have 2 board members with me, David Jones and also Joe Herring. Again, we look forward for the repurposing of the A.C. Shriner home to begin, and finally, the opening of the doors to the Heritage Center at some point very soon. Thank you.
I might note that Joe Herring is a former mayor, the youngest mayor ever.
I was a long time ago.
All right.
That's the end of the speakers.
Okay, all right. Okay, we now come to the consent agenda. These items are considered routine, can be approved in one motion unless a council member asks to separate consideration of an item, or a citizen does the same. Are there anyone asked to pull any of these items?
No, sir.
Okay, all right. Council, what is your will on this matter?
I move that we accept 4A, 4B, 4C, 4D as consent agenda as presented.
I second.
Okay,
Sorry, before we vote, I'd like to pull 4A and 4B just for information.
okay. Then,
Okay, my motion will be that we accept 4C and 4D.
yeah.
Second.
Okay, so the motion is for 4C and 4D. We come back to 4A and 4B. On those 2 last items, 2 out of the 4, what is, your motion is to proceed
Accept
with
those
those?
2.
All right, we've got a second.
Brenda, yes.
Okay. All in favor, let it be known by the upraised hand, and motion carries. Okay, Mr. Garcia?
Well, first, do we have a staff member to speak to this? Okay, thanks. Just curious, just for public information, can you give an overview of what this is? I had a couple people ask me.
Right, so this project is a creation of our GIS base map. We have one in place right now, but it's something that we inherited and we kind of built upon, so there's an issue with accuracy. So this project is to build that base map so that moving from here on forward, we're confident in the accuracy of that. So any projects, any software integration we would do, we have that confidence moving forward with the data that's in the GIS system.
And is this gonna be like a reoccurring thing that comes to council every year, every so often?
No, so this will just be a one-time cost. So once this project is done, like I said, we'll have that starting point base layer. So as we build more GIS layers, we have that accuracy.
Right. And this is the one that we use, like if you go to, I guess if you search for it, and you go to the, what's the platform that we use? I can't remember this. Does it start with?
Esri?
Yes.
Yes.
That's the one, right?
Yes.
And so it's building that layer on top.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Okay.
All right, okay.
Is,
Do I hear a motion on 4A?
I'll move to authorize the city manager to finalize and execute the contract.
Okay, second here?
I'll second.
Yeah. Motion second. All in favor, let it be known by the raised hands. Okay, and it passes unanimously. And then 4B.
So this is a rejection for all bids. So just curious on what our next steps are gonna be.
So we reject these bids and we come back in and rescope the project, giving us an opportunity to fund a portion of it or the whole thing. And we would revisit that after the first of next year when hopefully the market stabilizes a little bit and the the material cost is what's driving the cost of the bids up right now. The vendors can't give us more than a 10-day window for them to hold the price, and so it's very hard for our contractors to hold it for 30 days for us, and so they give us really high bids right now.
Do we have an estimated time or in communications with any of the bidders or anybody about when this could possibly come back to us again? Or when we'll put out that we're accepting bids?
So we put them out after the first of the year and hopefully get them in February. Get them back in February and get them open again and see what that looks like. But the main issue is we gotta watch the market and see what it's doing. And hopefully as soon as it stabilizes, we're in a position right now that we can rebid it at any time. So we're just looking for that stabilization there where we can get them to hold for a while.
Okay, so that'll be just around January timeframe.
Yeah, the sooner the better.
Yeah.
The sooner the better. As soon as we see that, our indicators right now say February. We're not sure if there's any real science to that, or if that's just a number. It's far enough out that everybody's using that, but that's what we've been told.
Okay. And can you remind me what the budget was for this? It said it exceeded the city's budget, and
well, we looked at,
ask my
the
second
way that we got to the exceeded the city budget is we started building water projects long time ago. The most recent one was Bluebell. We bid it, came in at $130 a square foot. That was up from about $80 a square foot.
Right.
And this one came in at $270. And so it's twice as much as what it was this time last year, which was probably 30 or 40% above what it was that time year before. And so we just said, let's just wait, see if we can't save a little money here on a few months.
okay, that's pretty much my questions. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Okay, do we have a motion on that item, on 4B?
I move to reject all the bids that were received for this
Second.
project.
Okay, there's a motion second, all in favor? Let it be known by that raised hand. Okay, now go into public hearing and resolutions. Ms. McElhannon, read 5A for us.
Resolution number 50-2021, a resolution granting a conditional use permit to authorize a short-term rental unit on the property comprising Lot 2 and part of Lot 3, Block 26, Westland Place, and more commonly known as 516 Florence Street. Said property is located within a single-family residential with accessory dwelling unit zoning district, R1A, and making said permit subject to conditions and restrictions. And there are no citizen speakers signed up.
Okay,
Oh, but this is a public hearing. Yeah.
that's public hearing, right. Okay, Mr. Paxton.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening. This is a resolution for a conditional use permit at 516 Florence Street for a short-term rental. There are 24 letters mailed out and, of course, published in the Daily Times for the Planning and Zoning Commission public hearing. At the time this agenda bill was written, we've had no feedback from the adjacent property owners. On October 7th, Planning and Zoning Commission recommended the case for approval, and it does include the standard conditions. Here's a map that our planning intern has been putting together for mapping the short-term rentals in Kerrville. The two blue dots that you see are the two before the council tonight. The red ones have been approved by conditional use permit, and the green ones were grandfathered prior to the current zoning code adoption in 2019. Here's the adjacent area around Florence Street. Of course, there's the property showing that they do have adequate room for parking in the existing driveway. I'd be pleased to answer any questions before or after the public hearing.
I like that map.
Okay, council, any questions on this one?
It satisfies the parking and looks good.
All right. Okay, we open the public hearing, and if someone wants to speak on this and has not signed up with the public hearing, you are welcome to do that. All right. We're out of the public hearing at 6:34. All right, let's hear a motion on 5A.
I'll make a motion that we approve resolution number 50-2021.
Right? Is
I'll
there a
second
second?
that.
Got a motion second? Okay, all in favor, let it be known by the raised hands. Okay, let me make just a comment. We've got about 56, maybe now 58 vacation rentals in Kerrville. And we have a good ordinance that that enables the owners of these to make money as a vacation rental. At the same time, it protects the neighbors. And Fredericksburg has got 700 vacation rentals in the city, and now they're coming up with an ordinance to control them. So that's be tough. Okay, 5B, Ms. McLennan.
Resolution number 51-2021, a resolution granting a conditional use permit to authorize a short-term rental unit on the property comprising Lot 3 and part of Lot 4, Block 8, Hillcrest Edition, and more commonly known as 1008 Tybee. Said property is located within a single-family residential zoning district R1 and making said permit subject to conditions and restrictions. There are no citizen speakers signed up. However, this is a public hearing.
Okay. 6:35, the public hearing is open. Anyone to speak to this matter? Okay.
Okay, this isn't really plus or minus to this particular CUP, but just something to consider. I know you guys are looking at short-term rentals in this CUP. Something to consider, though, is it's not just that these are CUPs in residential areas, businesses in residential areas. It's also, we have a housing problem, right? And what we're doing with these short-term rentals is we're actually flipping housing into lodging. And to the extent that we're having trouble increasing the stock of housing that we have, these are all almost always going to be affordable housing that is, or the more affordable housing that's being turned into lodging. So we're actually removing more housing from our stock. Something to consider when you're allowing them as it continues to grow. Just think.
I need you to state your name and address, please.
My name's still George Broody, 1616 Glen Road.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, Mr. Strickey.
Bruce Strickey, 615 Earl Garrett. And George brings up a great point, and he's right. What we also need to think about is that right now we have nearly 2,000 units that are in some form of development in the city for residential occupancy. And while these units may be affordable, they bring tourism to Kerrville, which is one of our largest industries, I believe next to medical and the school district. And that's very important to our quality of life. And though, like when I moved here in 2006, I'd like to pull the gate shut, it's not really possible. We need to do sustainable growth to encourage our industries that are successful here, that do provide those jobs. And this is one thing that's working because now, in our new 100%, people are less desirable of going to a hotel. They want to have their own space. They don't want to be down the hall to a dozen people. They want to be in a small space where they control who they're interacting with. They want to still come to our restaurants and use our river trail and enjoy Kerrville because this is a great place. We've got the Folk Festival, which is the longest folk festival in the entire nation. We now have Arcadia Live, which is blooming, and we're still waiting to see exactly what all those blooms are going to be. But that is a wonderful venue for downtown. We've got new restaurants, we've got art galleries, we've got the art shows like we've always had. The Calla Theater is reopening. And so this is not the time to say we need to move things back to hotels. And Mayor, you pointed it out. Fredericksburg had no ordinance. It was an inspection only. Kerrville and our staff had the foresight to say we need an ordinance for short-term rentals. And I'm not saying that ordinance is perfect. It probably needs to be tweaked a little bit. But two things that get missed a lot is that the standard conditions that we hear from Mr. Paxton are, the parking and such, and it sounds like everyone has the same thing. But the fact of the matter is, before this even gets to the city council, at the Planning and Zoning Commission, what's considered is the location in town, its distance from amenities, the ability of people to walk to restaurants or parks or the river trail and different things. And so the conditions that are actually applied to the CUPs that come to the city council are not the same every year, every time, in every application. The ones that get written down in the permit may be the same because they've already gone through a vetting. And Mr. Siegerman here is leading our P&Z right now, and his previous chairman before him also did a very good job at looking at places. There was one that was brought in, the Donna Kays, the lady streets, and it really didn't fit. And the P&Z said, we're not going to approve this. And so the conditions are not the same on every single one, though they may appear the same on the CUP. And so I just want to point out that this is actually a great process. As you've pointed out, while we are, 3 times the size of Fredericksburg, we have 1/10 the number of short-term rentals. They are hugely struggling because they didn't do logical, sustainable growth and management in their city structure up there. We are in a much better place.
Thank you.
I can address that real quick if you don't mind.
Okay, yeah, it's public hearing, go ahead.
So my name is Mike Sigerman. I live at 4000 Comanche Trace Drive, and I am the chairman of the Planning and Zoning Commission. And we are looking at a lot of these conditional use permits for short-term rentals, and I appreciate what George is saying, but we're not given the option to make a decision based on what we think that property should be used for. If we can't make a decision because we say, well, you're taking it out of the supply of affordable housing. We have to make a decision based on the property, where it is, what the neighbors think, does it fit the criteria for a conditional use permit, and that's what we're given. We can't just decide we don't like it because we don't like what they're using it for, and we want it to be used for something else. And so we're faced with the guidelines that we have to make those decisions, which we do the best we can. Ultimately, as city council makes the final decision. But we've had people come up before in the planning and zoning meetings and say, well, all you're doing is taking a supply of houses out of, affordable housing in Kerrville. Well, no, we're not. That's the owner's decision. We can't say, yeah, you can't do it because we don't like what you're doing with it. We want it to be something else. And so, just like a lot of things, property rights in the state of Texas are pretty high up on the chain. And so we make those decisions based on what we're given and whether it fits the criteria, not because we don't like what it's being used for.
Thank you.
Sorry, one more thing.
Okay.
Kelly Barker, I'm actually the owner of 516 Florence Street that you guys just talked about. And I just want to say thank you for allowing us to do this, because as the owner, we've gone through the long-term rental, and the property was, the tenants were so destructive that our option was either to do something like this and bring tourism, allow spaces for people to affordably rent on a short-term basis, or not rent the property at all and just hold it as an investment. Because unfortunately, a lot of the folks that you end up with as long-term renters here are just really destructive to the property and to the neighborhood. And so being a neighborhood where my niece and nephew grow up, being a neighborhood where we have lived and we are very ingrained in that community, this is the most respectful way to utilize that property from our standpoint. And that was the consensus of the neighborhood. At the planning and zoning, everyone seemed to be surprised that we didn't get anyone contesting the property, and I think that it's because everyone recognizes that this is a way to utilize the property with as little footprint on the local neighborhood as possible. So, just consideration.
All right, okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Or anyone else speak to this matter?
Is it appropriate for me to say a word now, or should I wait?
Let's close the public hearing and then you can
First,
comment. Okay. Public hearing is closed at 6:44. Okay.
I just want to add that what is happening to many of these Airbnbs, they're being transformed. And the one that we've got before us here, if you went on Google Earth, it's an old picture of that house. And if you drove past it now, you'd hardly recognize it. People are putting money into these houses that would not otherwise be done, and they're improving the quality of the neighborhood, the quality of the town. They're doing a great job with these. And Yes, property rights are important, as we've talked about. Rentals are needed, as Mr. Baruti has talked about. But what these are doing for our town are good things. So, just wanted to add that.
Okay, then do we have a motion on 5B?
I'll move that we approve resolution number 51-2021.
I'll second.
All right, we've got a motion second. All in favor, would be number to raise hands. It's unanimous. Okay. Would you read in 6A, Ms. McLennan?
Appointment to the Building Board of Adjustment and Appeals. This appointment is eligible for executive session, 1.074, and there are no citizen speakers signed up.
All right. Council discussion. Do we need to go into executive session?
Mayor, I don't believe we do. Councilwoman Clarkson and I are the two members of council on the interview team for this one. And I personally interviewed both of them. And I appreciate both of them for applying for the position. Unfortunately, looking at the qualifications of the board and the qualifications that I discussed with both of them, they both admitted that they don't fall within any of the qualifications that are listed. And I'll just go for the record. Mike, he's a real estate agent, but he does not hold any of the qualifications there, and he told me that. And so does Steve. So again, I appreciate that, and I don't want to try to make it hard for people to volunteer in our community. We've recently had to amend the qualifications for one of our boards, and maybe taking a look at this would be a good idea. For example, Steve, he's a licensed plumbing inspector in the state, but the qualification, he said, is a unrestricted master plumber, and that's different from plumbing inspector. So he said, unfortunately, I don't think I fall with any of those qualifications. So with that, again, I appreciate them for doing that. So we may want to take a look at expanding those qualifications. But, and I haven't, Councilman Clarkson, I didn't have too much time to discuss this, but my recommendation would be well, we couldn't really appoint any of them because it doesn't fall within the qualifications.
Mike, I don't want to put you on the spot, but this board is subject to state regulations, is that correct? Is this one of our boards that falls in that, or do we have purview to
No, it's really under our building codes, and it's really,
Okay, so we don't have to follow.
right.
Okay.
And Mr. Garcia, I don't understand with Mr. Asmus, why is that? Why does he not qualify according to what you've said?
So according to him, actually, he even said that he doesn't qualify. So the 7 qualifications are: you have to be a licensed architect in this state, a professional engineer licensed in the state, a master electrician licensed in the state, an unrestricted master plumber licensed in the state, a mechanical contractor with a Class A state license, a person licensed by the city as a contractor, and a person that is active in the construction industry. The qualification that we did think he would fall under would be a contractor licensed by the city, but he no longer has that license that expired, and he's like, oh yeah, I don't have that anymore, so I don't qualify under that anymore. So, I'm sorry, that was Steve, but Mr. Asmus didn't have any of those qualifications.
Okay.
As we appointed other people, have we looked at them as that closely? I'm sure we have people on there that maybe do not meet all of those qualifications exactly. I don't know who's on that committee or who works with that board.
Well, and I don't have the ordinance in front of me. As I recall, they're slotted. The members are slotted into those positions. So you need an electrician, a plumber, contractor, and I assume that previously we've all slotted them based on their qualifications into specific, positions. But this is up to you. We've changed it, or council's changed it a couple times since I've been here, and we can look at it.
Right, and we had these appointments, since I've been on council, we've struggled to find the specific criteria for
these places as well.
Right, and you know, it's a board,
Had to
it's a,
push it before.
right, it's a technical board, and they're
Right.
considering
So we need-
technical
right.
issues, and so you need
You need-
experts.
Yep.
Right.
It seems to me that, I don't know whether we need to table this or ask the staff to work with us in any kind of revision, but also republicize these vacancies.
We can do that. We can certainly republicize it, and then we'll huddle up as staff. And this is one that we consistently have trouble filling because of these requirements. And so let us go back and take a look historically at both the individuals that have filled these positions in the past and the trouble we've had, and see if we can come up with some recommendations for
Yeah,
you.
I would be interested in development services because the need is
Yes.
obvious for the technical expertise.
Right.
But if there is a way to maybe be more inclusive of some professional trades that would benefit this board.
We can do that.
Yeah, like including a plumbing inspector. There's a master plumber qualification, so maybe including some things like that. And there was one that maybe if staff could, you know, like you said, huddle up together and provide some clarification. The last one says a person that is active in the construction industry. That's
Yeah,
very
that's-
broad
that's
and
very
vague.
broad.
Right?
And
Yeah.
it was very hard for me to, when we talked with them, they were like, I may be, but I don't think I am, so I'm not gonna put myself.
Yeah.
Okay, then rather than table it, by a common agreement, can we ask the staff to work on this and
Yes.
republicize the positions? We'll come back.
We'll do that.
Okay, all right.
Now, I hate to turn down people that are willing to work,
Yeah.
and if there was some way that it can be, there's ways we can work it, it would be great.
Yeah.
Good job.
All right. Okay, 6B, would you read that in, Ms. McLennan?
Appointment to the Food Service Advisory Board.
All right.
Yes, I took the lead on this one just because I served on that board myself and I interviewed all three applicants. All are qualified. One is a kind of a reappointment, a chair position. And they do meet all the requirements. I did talk to Darrell Poe, and he would be grateful if we approve the nomination of Lee Howard, Marcus Willis, and Larry Ray to the Food Service Advisory Board. So I am nominating them.
I'll second that.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
As a part of the interview team, I interviewed them all too, and I would second that motion to have them on.
All right. Any further discussion on this? Okay. Is there a motion?
Yeah, she made the motion.
No, I'm sorry. Got a motion, second. You seconded, Mr. Garcia? Okay.
Yes.
All right. All in favor, let it be known by their upraised hands. Okay, and the motion carries unanimously. Okay. Now, 7A, Ms. McLennan.
Resolution number 52-2021, a resolution casting votes of the City of Kerrville, Texas for Kerr Central Appraisal District Board of Directors.
Okay. Ms. McLennan, do you want to explain this? We've got 661 votes.
Yes,
We
sir.
can give, and if we are for this slate, then we have to give every one of them at least one, but somebody gets the balance.
That's correct.
Okay.
Can we allocate them however we want?
That's correct.
You can
And just say divide it evenly if we wanted to.
Yeah.
Right, you can allocate them however you want. There's a strategy, if you assign at least one vote to each place, then if that person resigns or is removed from office for whatever reason, then you get to consider a replacement. Without a vote for that person, then it would go to the entities that have voted actually for that person. if that
Okay.
makes sense.
All right. Council, what is your pleasure on this?
Well, just a question, is this item eligible for executive session?
No.
You know, I don't think we've listed it as executive session. I think you actually could, but my recommendation is because we didn't list it for executive session, we ought to come back if you so desire.
I would suggest that there are four of these people are already,
Yep.
they're on the board. And my suggestion was to give each of them 130, give Jeff Talarico 130, and add 3 to the other 2. Or
Say that again?
what? 130 to number 2, number 3, number 4, number 6, number 7, and 3 to number 1 and number 5.
130 for the rest?
So one thing that I believe council has done previously, another strategy in essence, I think the city of Kerrville is we have one of the biggest number of votes that we're able to cast out of all the entities. I don't know for sure, but we're close there. And I know
The school has a lot more.
yeah, you're right, they do. But one of the things that we could probably take into consideration too is if we were to, and I don't have a specific person, but if we were to allocate more than a majority of the votes to a specific person, that in essence guarantees that that person will be on the board. Where in essence, if we didn't and we were to do it, allocated it as suggested or in any other way, they may not, depending on how the other entities vote. Just keeping that in consideration.
I would rather see us, if we didn't do what I just suggested, just spread the votes out amongst all of them evenly.
I think that'd be the way to go. Because if we give 130 votes to all of them, everybody else can just give 3 to 3, they're gonna get their feelings hurt.
Then I would move that we equally spread the votes amongst all 7, and I believe if there'll be one extra maybe left over if we do that.
How do you want that one done, Mayor?
It's up to Mrs. Iger, who gets the extra, who gets the 1?
Well, can I ask, is there a disadvantage to doing it this way?
Yeah.
Well, you have, I guess you could say there was, probably. I mean, it depends, but if you give them,
I tell you what, folks, the way this works, well, maybe I shouldn't say that, but these folks are almost certainly going to be elected.
well, except for 2. I mean, there's only 5 spots. Yeah.
Right. So,
And I would guess the 4 that are on the board right now will probably, as you said, they will be reelected.
Okay, what do you want to do?
I think I made a motion, so I think
Okay,
that we
all
need
right.
to have
Okay.
a second or
Yeah,
I need
do we have a
to
second?
withdraw.
130, and then there will be, how many with 3 votes?
I thought yours was to do it equally divided.
Well, did you go back to equally divided?
I went back.
Okay,
My
all right.
motion says equally
Yeah,
divided.
okay, equally divided. and then
Okay.
Add 1 to somebody.
To some.
Okay, that's your motion.
That's
Is there
my
a
motion.
second? Okay, motion dies for lack of a second. What do you want to do?
So I will point out to council, you do have a deadline of December 15th. If
We
so
can bring it back
desired, you
next
could wait to the December 14th council meeting
Do an
and
executive.
provide a little bit, more time to examine this item, and we could put it on the agenda on December 14th, if that's desired.
Yeah, it shouldn't be this difficult, but anyway, okay. Then we'll move on to 7B.
So we're going to,
Wait a minute.
we're going to table it?
Yeah, well, technically not table it.
Bring it back to December 4th.
Is that the best idea?
Yeah, we'll wait till to bring
We'll
it back.
table it and come back to it.
I think what we gotta understand is what are we gonna table it for? What are we gonna do from now until we table it?
Well, you mentioned executive session. Is
Yeah.
it your desire to have more discussion in an executive session?
I think so. If we could do something like that.
And just, you all know this, the executive session will be for the qualifications, what are the qualifications? And
Right.
What are you looking for,
Right.
right, specific individuals?
Right.
Okay. All right.
Well, and it's just before, and we don't need to go on this too much, but I'm just reading the executive session item. Would the wording on that not permit us to go ahead into executive session? Because it says, city council may, as permitted by law, adjourn into executive session at any time, discuss any matter listed above if they meet the qualifications in.
I think the way we handle the agenda,
Yeah.
including tonight, where we've listed some of the appointments for,
Traditionally.
yes, I
Okay.
would, my recommendation would be to push it to.
Okay, that's fine. All right.
All right, okay. All right, on 7B, Ms. McLennan. Wait. We need to vote on the motion to table?
You don't need to. We know what.
Okay,
Joe
all
wants
right.
to do.
Okay, 7B.
Citizen requested agenda item, a discussion to determine when the next Kerrville general election shall be prescribed to be held to elect the mayor, place 3 and place 4 of the city council. Citizen George Broody, and it was sponsored by Councilmember Roman Garcia, and we do have 2 citizen speakers signed up.
All right, okay.
And before we bring up the citizen, if I may say, the reason for my sponsor of this item is it's a major, I don't even think it's an interpretation, a major issue about our charter and about state law. And so because of that, I think it has great significance on what it plays to our next election. So that's why I sponsored it for some discussion.
All right, okay. Who are our 2 speakers?
The presenter is George Broody, and then we have 2 citizen speakers.
Okay.
Okay, George Broody, 1616 Glen Road. Thanks for sponsoring this, and thanks for hearing this out. Basically, what this is not is to discuss moving all the elections. This is, as Mr. Garcia pointed out, really just to talk about the charter and making sure that we're actually following it. So the big question is, how do we determine election dates here in Kerrville? Well, some cities actually mandate it by a specific date. We do not. We have one rule on the books that actually addresses it, and that's in the charter. And it says, under section 203, terms of office, the members of city council shall hold their offices for a term of 2 years and until their successors have been elected. That's really the only ruling law that we have. What marks the beginning of a term in Kerrville? Well, state law mandates that you're required to have a vote in order to be elected to office. So the beginning of the term is the election that took place. And in this case, what we're talking about is the 3 members to the right. Their term began November 17, when they were elected and duly qualified at a meeting, November 17, 2020. So then that's the beginning date. Everything else is really just misinterpretations of things. There's been some confusion about what the governor's proclamation of March of 2020 actually stated was happening. The words were pretty clear. It simply said that you could move one election date. The one if you had one scheduled for May of 2020, you had the ability to move it to November of 2020. All you were doing was postponing the begin date of that term, changing nothing else. That actually is worded in the proclamation, saying nothing else would change. So the question becomes, then further confusing matters was the canvassing document that was written up in the city of Kerrville for that November 17th meeting, which actually made a couple of statements. One, it said, whereas City of Kerrville held its general election on 3rd day, November, 3 members were elected, each to serve the remainder of a 2-year term. Well, clearly they weren't serving the remainder of any term. They were being elected to the beginning of a term. However long it was going to be is irrelevant to this question. That resolution was wrong on its face just when it said that. The ordering of the election, that November election, occurred originally in January of 2020. It also said we were ordering an election to have these 3 officers serve out a 2-year term. The amended order did not change that, made no wording about length of term. So basically, again, no change. Lastly, confusing things is you may have heard that the Secretary of State had made a ruling that proclamation shortened terms. That's actually not accurate. It's part of the story. As Paul Harvey would say, this is the rest of the story. When asked, the Secretary of State will tell you they don't interpret charters. They only interpret the law. So when they were asked the impact of the governor's proclamation on our terms or on our elections, the answer was, and this is where you get to say, and the rest of the story, was, where did I put it? Well, I'm going to have to go here. And it says, if, sorry, okay. So your newly elected office holders from the November election will have a shorter term. Their next election will return back to the May date. And this is the part that was left out. They put it in, but it was left out in the explanation earlier in the year. Their next election will return back to the May date if and only if the entity conducts their general election in May, which we don't. We don't have our elections mandated for a date, a specific. The real confusion for the Secretary of State is most cities do. An example would be Sugarland. Sugarland city charter mandates their elections to be held in May. A place like that could have moved their one election, but their succeeding election is mandated to, again, occur in May. So their terms would have had a shortened life because they began later. Ours does not. So at the end of the day, you're asked to do one thing. That's to enforce and uphold the charter. There is no conflicting law. We're a home rule city. So the ruling law is the charter. And if you have any other superseding laws, bring them on. But at this point, there aren't any. So that's the discussion, what it's about. I guess in theory, I'm asking for you all to take the time to read what I gave you in preparation for this and consider directing staff not to bring forward an order of an election in May, because that would be violating the charter. That's what I'm asking. I'll stand
Council,
here
any
if you have
discussion?
questions.
When we talk about the resolution, though, for the canvassing of the mayor, place 3 and place 4, the resolution, I think you put it in the information that you gave us, said that each were to serve the remainder of a 2-year term and are declared duly elected for a term that will continue through May 7th, 2022. At least wasn't the second, whenever I was elected, there was a resolution was then used too. Wasn't there similar language in that resolution to canvass my election as it was for the rest of the council members?
In your election, which would have been this year, it actually...
Because it set a date for May that my expiration would be.
Yeah, your resolution, so 21-2021 is the resolution canvassing the election that we had in May of this year. And it said, whereas the city of Kerrville held its general election on the first day of May for the purpose of electing Councilmember Place 1 and Councilmember Place 2, each to serve a 2-year term. That's what it says. So it's actually not saying it's a shortened 2-year term, it's saying it's a 2-year term. And then in the section 4 of that, it goes on to say, it defines what that 2-year term would be, and it puts in elected for a term that will continue through May 6, 2023, 2 years after your election date.
Okay, any other council discussion?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I appreciate all your time, Mr. Broody, and all that you've done, but this decision was made over a year ago, and nothing has changed, and I don't see that there is any need to make any changes.
Well, and also, I know where you're coming from here, Mr. Baruti, and I understand what you're saying. The fact is, this pandemic is kind of uncharted territory for all of us. So if we need to, in the future, change our charter and put a May date in that spot, then let's do that. I just think it's time to move on.
Well, let me just respond real quickly to that last part. I would agree that if we need to change it in the future, we should. But right now, you don't have the authority really to violate the charter as it's written now.
Yeah,
And
and
that's
the
what
city,
we'd be
the
doing.
city attorney has advised us that it is not a violation of the charter. We've talked about this before, we've made the decision, we've consulted with city attorney, and that May day looks good for us. Do we have another speaker?
Yes, sir. Bruce Strickey.
You should go first. Bruce Strickey, 615 Earl Garrett. We have to understand, to begin with, the previous speaker, that he works in computers. And computers are very literal. If you've ever coded, if you've ever done BASIC or C++ or Visual or, any of that stuff, what you write down, the computer does exactly. And I've done enough coding to know that it takes a little while to get what I've written down to be exactly what I meant it to say and what logically should be done to continue a program. So thinking about it in that context, it makes sense what Mr. Baruti is saying. And he brings an interesting argument. He said a couple of things, though, were interesting. He pointed out that the AG of Texas said that the charter is not law. The AG will not look at this issue because it's not law, and they only interpret law. It is, don't interrupt me. I was very respectful for you, and that is unrespectful. He did say that the AG will not look at this because they interpret law. And he was talking about the charter at the time he did it, as rude as he can be. The other thing I'd like to point out is, again, back to his computerness, is we're talking about, as far as I know with George, we're talking about significant digits. The charter says 2 years. That's one significant digit. He's arguing for 1.5 years. We shouldn't be using 1.5 years. Well, if we go back to our math in elementary school, significant digits tells us that 1.5 is 2 years. I don't know, right? I don't understand the way that his head works. He brings up these arguments, and they sound very logical. But they're taken from a perspective, and that's what's important. Every speaker, every counselor, every staff member, every public person who comes up here and speaks has a perspective. I have one. I have a bias. I'm usually pretty open about what my bias is. We have to look at things in context. And you know what? That is what is so great about America. We hire, and we do it by voting, we hire representatives to represent us because we're not a democracy. We're a representative democracy. We hire representatives to look at the issues, to discern the facts, to make the best decisions for people. And I know it may not be popular here in Kerrville, but one of my favorite books as a child was Profiles in Courage, where representatives, and this is not an example, but it's a point of how far sometimes representatives have to go, where they make an unpopular decision because they know it's what's best for our community. And that's very hard. And we're in a time today where representatives have to make hard choices. Sometimes they're popular and sometimes they're not. The fact of the matter is we voted them in, and I can tell you that every one of these people up here and every one in the previous council and the previous council, and I've been doing it for almost 20 years, whether I agree with them or not, how they voted, after a meeting, they get a message from me, hopefully in person, that thanks them for their service.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Mike
All right.
Sigerman.
Oh, okay.
Michael
Mike.
Sigerman.
Michael Sigerman, 4,000 Comanche Trace Drive, and I understand George's philosophy. I believe I know where George's intent is. George's intent is to bring the city election into November with the national elections, because that's what he does by pushing this issue. Because if we push this election to November of this year, that means that that next election has to be 2 years from then, and the one after that, and the one after that. So what we're left with is 3 people being elected in November and 2 people being elected in May, unless we choose to change that. We have 3 city and council members here that are the only ones that are really affected by this decision at this point. I don't know that we're purposely violating the city charter. I would leave that up to my case, the city attorney, and that would be his decision, and if he makes that decision, he lives with it. But I think what we need to do is we need to listen to the council members up here, all 5 of you, 3 of you who were affected by this decision. You knew when you got elected that it was a shortened term. You knew when you got elected it was going to be your election was going to come up in May of next year. And it appears to me that all of you agree with that decision and are looking forward to the next election, whether you choose to run or not. And we look at this on the Planning and Zoning Commission. I deal with the staff. They look at the staff. I think everything you guys do, you do what you think is best for the city of Kerrville. You make your decisions, not what you think is what you want, what you like, but what's best for the city of Kerrville. And I think the decision that needs to be made here is we need to get back to our May elections and get away from having a city council election during a national election. I know everything is partisan, and I think a lot of people, whether they're voting in May or voting in November, are voting partisan. But when we have our city elections for our city officials in May, we get the luxury and the opportunity to deal with city issues, with city leaders, with things that need to be done for the city of Kerrville, and we don't tie it into national partisan elections. So I believe that listening to what you guys have said, listening to what Mike Hayes has said, the decision would be, and I know that's not a decision to be made, to get our elections back to May, get away from the pandemic, the one-time situation where there was a different election, and do what's best for the city of Kerrville. Thank you.
Okay. It is my recommendation that we move on to the next item.
I'd like to have some more discussion, Mayor, please, as
Okay.
this item was brought to council before I was elected, and it's been stated a couple times that the decision has already been made. Respectfully, I don't think a decision has been made yet. That decision won't come before council until our next meeting when we decide to order the election and we vote on a resolution. And at that time, that's when council will ultimately decide whether to keep the resolution as it may come to us, which may be the May date, or to amend it to the November. So I like to have some more discussion with our attorney too. So, can you just give a brief response? I mean, I saw your email that we got, and I read that, but I don't understand how we can have an election in May if when the terms start by charter is when they're elected and duly qualified, and that was in November. So that's the start of the term. And if the charter also provides that the term is 2 years, how can we then go and say, okay, we're going to have it in May instead of November?
Well, before I proceed, I want to make sure that we want to have the discussion in open session, because I'll give you some legal advice.
Have discussion, what?
Well, Councilmember Garcia is asking for my legal opinion.
Okay.
I'm happy to provide it. In this forum, you also have the opportunity to take this into executive session or to hear it another time. Let me just say this too. This is the second time that the speaker has brought this issue to council. I have researched it before. I don't think he's correct.
What's the major flaw in what he's saying that isn't correct?
Does council want me to proceed?
No.
Okay.
I have no need to hear anymore.
Okay, I make a motion that we move on to the next item.
I second that motion.
Okay. All right, we got a motion to move on to the next item. All in favor,
Excuse me, Mayor.
raise a hand.
Mayor, with all due respect, I can't be interrupted while my time's going, so you can't make that motion. I still have time left.
You got 30 seconds, I think.
I had 2 minutes left. I had 2 minutes
Yeah,
left.
but you had also
she
already
took it
used
away.
your time at the beginning, and she
You can still
started
come
it
back, though.
over. Yeah.
All right, okay, 2 minutes.
Thank you.
So,
So, you can see that we're trying to move on, but this is a major discussion about our charter and whether we're going to uphold it. You look at the charter, it's the will of the people. And the people are the ones who created the charter. They're the ones who vote on the provisions of the charter when we have amendments and when it was first created. And although there have been statements about whether 1.5 can mean 2 or not, the charter says 2 years. So we can't go flip-flopping. It's not up for interpretation about how long. If it says black and white, it's 2-year terms when they're elected and duly qualified. It's 2 years. And so I respect the opinion of everybody who spoke and those on council who may disagree, but in terms of upholding the will of the citizens and our city charter, you know, when we come up here and we're elected, we raise our right hand and swear to uphold the Constitution and the laws of the United States and of this state. And the laws of this state provide that our charter is the ultimate ruling for us. It's like our constitution for the city. And so, you know, again, with all due respect, I respect everybody else's opinion, but I think we need to uplift and uphold the city charter and the will of the people. And we should hold the election in November, whether it's because for whatever reason, it's really just about upholding the charter. It's not about whether we want it with the other national candidates or not. It's upholding the charter. It's that simple, I think.
okay, this was an item for discussion, not for action, but I make my motion once again. I move that we move on to the next item. Is there a second?
I second.
Okay. All in favor, let it be known by the raised hands.
Fine with moving on now.
Okay. All right. 7C, Ms. McLennan, if you'll read that in.
Amendments to procedural rules for meetings, Kerrville City Council, and we do have one citizen speaker.
Okay. All right. Council discussion.
Well, I think there are several amendments. Of course, this is an item, just background for everybody, this is an item that was put on the agenda when at a previous council meeting, and there are several amendments. I believe Council Member Clarkson, Eichner, and myself have all submitted recommendations for amendments to the procedural rules. So, and then we have a packet of amendments from our attorney as well that we asked him when we initially had the discussion about the procedural rules. And since nobody else wanted to speak or talk about it, I suggest that we just go in order of our packets designed and start with those recommendations. And I guess we can start with our city attorney, that's first, and then move throughout the list.
Before we do that, I have made some changes and I am going to withdraw the things that I proposed. I feel like some of them are getting into the weeds too much and that we are adults, and some of the things that I had put on there as adults and as council members, we just need to respect each other and respect the staff. And so I just feel like that I no longer want to ask for the things that I had submitted. So they've been taken off the table.
Okay. Is there, Ms. Clarkson, do you have some recommendations?
Mine was submitted.
Okay, all right, okay. Let me say, this is probably gonna take a couple of hours. So I would suggest that we take a 5-minute break and then come back. No.
Excuse me.
At 7:27, we are back in session. I would like to address this issue. These procedural rules are very tedious and detailed. For us to work through all of this in a council meeting is going to take a long time, and I don't think it's going to be that productive. I make a motion that we move this item to a workshop soon. Do I get a second on that?
I will second that.
Okay. All right. Any discussion?
I would like to make another motion, Mr. Mayor.
You'd like to make a motion?
Another motion. May I?
No,
Well, we
not-
have to.
Not till this one's
Not till
over.
yours is taken care of.
Okay, all right. Okay, all in favor of moving this to a what?
Discussion?
Yeah, I asked for discussion. Go ahead.
Sorry, well, I was just letting
Oh, go
Councilor Ackner finish. We've had this agenda item on our agendas for, I don't know how long, maybe a couple months now, it feels like. And I feel like to keep on pushing this, we have it on the agenda tonight. We're really not even that long into our meeting. We've had meetings probably an hour and a half longer than this. I think if we can go through the amendments real quickly, we've all prepared to have it at this meeting. That's what the motion was done for, I don't know, several meetings ago, and then at one of our not too long ago meetings. I don't see a problem with going through it right now. It may seem like a lot of pages, and it may seem like a lot of amendments. I can tell you right now, some of the amendments that I'm proposing are really just formats and format changes, and so I think there may be 4 substantial changes that I'm making. That's just for me. I don't think we need to go into another and postpone this
Okay.
again.
And then Ms. Clarkson has some amendments.
I have an amendment, yes, sir.
Okay. Anybody else?
Now, personally, I didn't see any need to fix what wasn't broken, and I spent an exorbitant amount of time this weekend comparing an original to a proposed and to a enacted, and I shouldn't have had to spend that much time on something that was formatting changes. So that's why you got no changes from me, because I just don't think we need to fix what's broke, and formatting changes are not a big issue to me.
All right. Okay, my motion is that we move this to workshop. We've got a second. All in favor of that, let it be known by the raised hand. Okay, and it carries 3, and those opposed by like sign. Okay, it's 3, then it's 3 to 1. All right.
It should be 4 to 1.
Can
need to
I
vote.
make a motion?
Well, no, I mean,
No.
you need to vote on that motion.
Yeah, we
Oh,
voted.
I did not.
Right.
Yeah,
Oh,
And you need to.
oh, okay, I'm sorry.
okay. All right, we move to items for.
Are you,
wait,
are you
wait.
for or opposed to that
Am
motion?
I for? I am against doing
Okay.
that.
Okay, so it's 3 to, 3 to,
Okay. So it's 3 to 1.
Wait,
3-2,
3-2, yeah, 3-2. Okay, but you didn't vote.
but she had to, so she,
I vote against.
Okay. all
okay,
right,
so it's
3-2.
4,
3-2.
Okay,
We have
items for future agendas.
We have a citizen speaker on that item. We can let them speak.
We have a speaker?
We do have a citizen speak.
All right, let's hear a speaker.
Okay, Nikki Haynes.
Nikki Caines, 1809 Mountain Laurel. Thank you, Councilman Eichner, because I did have something that I was going to ask and request from your pages, your one page of revisions. But I'm going to move on to the second one instead, and it was something that Councilman Garcia brought up. In the past, I brought this up as well, that when a citizen comes up to this mic and gives their name and their address, we feel like we're putting ourselves out there, and our privacy is at risk. I mean, it is on camera, anybody knows it, whereas if since I'm a citizen, I do that, and I can say my address is, everybody's going to assume it's my home address. If I say any other address, it could be anything. In other words, if I had a business, I could give a business address. So I'm asking you to rethink that wording because I'm uncomfortable and it might deter other people from coming up here because they don't want to give their home address. It's on our submitted forms when we ask to speak. So if that can be revised, if you'll take that into consideration, that maybe it can be read, I'm a resident in Kerr County or Kerrville, or I have a business in Kerrville, instead of giving our address, I would really appreciate it.
Let me tell you, I talked to the city manager about that this week. And my thought is that, I mean, if you sign up to speak, well, you know, we have the address. But if when you come to the microphone, you say, my name is, and then I am a citizen of Kerrville, or I live in the county, and then you can go on and say if you got a business address in the town. But anyway, I agree with you.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you for your comments, and I have 3 recommended options that I was gonna propose to council this evening.
Good.
So there are 3, options that I'm proposing that we can change that to.
I really would appreciate it. I mean, if you want the citizens to speak, you want them to feel comfortable. And that, to me, is a little
I agree.
scary.
Yes, thank
Okay.
you.
Future agenda items? If not, do I hear a motion to go into executive session?
I will move that we move into executive session, but I need help on the number. Mike, what's our number? Here, I've got it, maybe. Here we go.
074.
551-0.
7-4.
047?
074.
074. Okay, all right. The motion's been made to go into executive session. Is there a second?
Yes, I'll second that.
Okay. All in favor, let it be known by the raised hands. Okay, and it carries unanimously. This will be short, and we probably will not have anything to report out. Okay, 7:34. We close this and open the executive session. We have no report coming out of the executive session, and it's 7:49. We're adjourned.